So we were talking about the use of language. This is not so much, this is like almost an association. It's not so much what I want to touch upon today. It's not really, it is words that we're using, but not as directly as the example I've given in the other video. So this is about good boy, good girl, this sort of idea. And we now think that we should be constantly saying, you're such a good boy, you're such a good girl. And there is nothing wrong with that. And, we're trying all these affirmations. But what is wrong with that is my latest discovery from, sort of analyzing how we see things. Basically, there is a big distinction between saying that you are good or the action that you've performed is good or what you've done is good. Why? Because if we create an association, for example, if a child has done a puzzle well and we say, oh, good girl or good boy, instead of you've done it so well, well done, job well done, or you've done it well, or you've succeeded, or you've done it well. It's a good job rather than a good boy, right? What happens is every action from then onwards, we start relating the idea of good or bad onto ourselves. Why is it that during divorce and all of those kind of things, children often feel that it's their fault, or they take on everything onto themselves? So we don't necessarily want to give them an idea that they are good or a good boy or a good girl or a bad girl or whatever, based on an action they've performed. It's very important to give a distinction, because the idea is that they are always a good boy, they are always a good girl. The more emphasis we make on that, the more they link certain actions to being a good girl or a good boy, and we don't want to do that. It's a very complicated idea, but the main thought behind this is that we want for our children to be confident. We want for them to feel good. We want for them to think that they are a good person, right? But we don't want certain actions to be linked, like if you study, only then you're good. If you achieve, only then you're good. No, you're good anyway. If you're a kind person, again, I'm saying I'm attaching meaning to it, but we shouldn't be. If there is just an understanding that they are good, they are so much more confident, and they don't worry about failure so much. If they fail, a person who thinks that they are good and they can sort of differentiate between good and bad actions, right? They can make better decisions, they can try more, and they will fail more, but they will learn more. And they're not going to stress about it. They're not going to create this sort of
the fear of failure, and
the fear of failure and putting it on themselves and thinking that they're bad.
Yeah, that they're not good enough.
Yeah, even now I have this when, for example, Gregory breaks something by mistake, his toy, and he's very upset about it. He says, oh, this bad. He just starts using the word bad. I'm saying, well, the breaking part is not great, so that's bad. And he says, at some point he said, Gregory is bad. I said, no, Gregory is very good. The action wasn't. So the breaking part that happened, that's not particularly good, but I mean, it's not even that bad really. But immediately he started taking it upon himself. It's so natural for kids to then take it upon themselves. So I try not to support it. So I try to immediately say, even, and this is another thing back to sort of being rested, because only when you are and you can really think properly, you can catch these moments. Because if he says it, it's so important to then say, no, you are always good. And it's hard to do so if you're annoyed by the action that he does or whatever. So if you are fully okay, then whatever action happens, then you're able to say, well, no, you're still a good boy, but this really wasn't good. What you have done, the action, what has happened, this is not the way to do it. But we're learning, it's okay. We're learning. But if I'm tired, I'm annoyed, I could probably snap, and then he'll think he's bad. So we're creating a really bad situation. So it goes back to us again. So it goes back to us feeling good, to even be able to remember this, register it, notice it, and act almost instantly, because it's an instant thing. It's not like they're remembering it for days and days. It's an instant. Every moment creates an emotional connection. Every single moment creates an emotion. So the more positive emotions we can create, the more confident our children will feel, I think.
Funny you say that. So when Zara was having issues sleeping, so we're going back to before she would sleep fine, and then she would use this thing of going to the toilet to delay going to bed. So we'd brush teeth, say don't use the toilet, she'll say no, we read the story, do our affirmations. Now when we're tucking in bed, I need to poo. So we go to the toilet, and she's not. And sometimes at this point, it's usually after 8. And I notice when she gets to bed after 8, she starts. I think she's now on adrenaline, or she's past the overtired point, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we get to the toilet, and I said, because now she sits on the toilet from crying. She's now sitting and she's laughing and she's talking. I'm like, no, we're not here to talk. You need to poo. You want to use the toilet? Use the toilet. So then I said to her, if you don't do a poo, I'm not going to be happy. I said this.
It's also an if. It's also the blackmail aspect.
But the funny thing, I had to quickly change it.
Yeah.
Because she said, so what happens if I don't do a poo? I want mommy to be happy. And I want daddy to be happy. And I was like, oh God.
Her happiness
That's
cannot
not good.
depend on your happiness.
And now at that point, I was like, no. Mommy, I am happy either way. If you do a poo, you don't do a poo, I'm going to be happy either way. And when I said, I'm not happy that
the situation. It's the situation.
Yeah, I'm not happy that you meant to be sleeping, it's past your bedtime. I need you to be sleeping, so I'm not happy that we're wasting this time. But when she's now really in this thing of, I want mommy and daddy to be happy, and I'm like, we are happy. You make us happy. What you need to worry about is you being happy. Like you just need to kind of focus on, because she's just really on this thing of, I want mommy to be happy.
But she's reflecting you as well. So that's again for us to go back to ourselves.
I think it's because I've said it. Like, if you don't do a poo, I'm not going to be happy. And she's really taken that on board. And as soon as she said that back to me, it made me realize how it looks to her.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've had to change it and not say it, because then I'm like, oh, actually, I don't want her to feel like she's not making us happy. So then I started feeling bad, like, oh no, I wasn't meant to say that. Like, that's not the best thing to say in that situation, or ever really. So I then had to change it, because I'm like, oh. And she said it another time again. I don't know what she was playing, or she was doing something. And it says, but I want daddy to be happy. I'm like, no, daddy is happy.
But maybe she's also reading of all of you where you're making each other in your family responsible for each other's happiness rather than for your own. Do you know what I mean? She could be reading off the family dynamic where if you have expectations of Dean, or if he is having expectations of you, then you are making your happiness dependent on his and vice versa. So she could be reading off of that. So maybe, yes, how you talk to her, absolutely. But again, this is back to the topic of always going back to yourself. I'll keep on saying this is my new shtick, which will probably get annoying. But if you go back to yourself, and if you find a way of where you're giving happiness to yourself, as weird as that sounds, whatever that means, whatever happiness means to you, without the expectation, because you even said a phrase in this video, if you rewind, and you will see that you said, you make us happy. You've already created that. You already said, well, you make us happy. Well, no, be happy for you. Make yourself happy. You know, so it's an interesting dialogue. I mean, we're talking and we're learning. Next video, we'll probably do more conclusions from this conversation and some more experiments.
Then it just boggles my head, because it's like, I want her not to take on.
Again, you're thinking about her. The answer to this is to go back to yourself, make yourself happy, and she will reflect it. It's a mirror. It's a mirror. As soon as you go back to yourself and don't think how she needs to make you happy or how Dean needs to make you happy, as soon as you create this little happiness for yourself, it'll translate instantly. It will translate. Just try it.
Yeah, I think I need to, because I think if she sees when I'm frustrated, or she sees that I'm not, I guess, my usual happy smiley self, then she does say, is mommy angry, or is mommy sad? And she's very in tune with her feelings now, because